I said, do whatever you want. And I just said, if I were you, I would cut it all off. The cameras never missed a moment of Princess Diana's life. Every smile or tear was scrutinized and broadcast to the world. But there was one detail almost nobody questioned. That was her hair. When Diana married Prince Charles, her golden locks framed her face like a fairy tale bride. Yet, as the years went by, the princess's hair grew shorter and her looks changed instantly. Not in a terrible way at all, but in a way that made her look even more beautiful. But what was Diana really saying with every strand that fell to the floor? And why did it take a marriage for her to consider a new hairstyle? Join us as we reveal the real reason why Lady Diana's hair got shorter after marrying King Charles. It is hard to forget the moment when Princess Diana, with her newly cut hair framing her face, became more than just a royal figure. Whether it was the striking 1990 Vogue cover or the night she stepped out in the infamous revenge dress, Diana's short hair radiated power. Suddenly, gone was the soft schoolgirl fringe of the 1980s. In its place stood something bolder, sharper, and unapologetically modern. But why did this hairstyle matter so much? After all, hair grows back. Well, that's because this cut was not cosmetic. Instead, it was a highly symbolic move. Across several cultures, cutting one's hair signals mourning, rebellion, or simply a rite of passage, mainly because hair is linked to one's identity. But for public figures, it becomes even more serious. And if a haircut could carry more weight than a speech, then Diana's haircut certainly did. History also shows us that hairstyles have long served as weapons and shields. Think of Madonna back in the day, using ever-changing looks to show reinvention and sexual power, or Sinead O'Connor, who shaved her head completely as a rejection of the industry's objectification of women. And that begs the question of what made Diana's short hair more seismic than anyone else's. Could it be the timing, arriving just as her marriage cracked? Could it be because she was now seizing control of the image the world already had of her? One thing is certain. When the scissors met her hair, Diana transformed into a completely different woman. But to truly understand its power, we must step back to the beginning, when her image was anything but her own. Right up to the big chop, Diana's hair told a different story. One look at it, and it's a fairy tale sight to behold. With soft, feathered locks and an effortless style, her hairstyle looked so romantic, as if carefully arranged to tell a story or perhaps cement a fantasy of innocence. But whose fantasy was it really? The truth is that Diana's early hairstyle was created by others. Her look was engineered by stylists who understood that image was currency in the royal family. Richard Dalton, her trusted hairdresser from her teenage years, was tasked with maintaining the Lady Di cut. He was not just trimming ends, he was managing a brand. He knew that each strand had to align with the palace's unspoken rules. No statement piece, only the illusion of perfection. By the mid-80s, the pressure to maintain this image spread far beyond the palace walls, and the Lady Di had become a global phenomenon. Women all over the world flooded salons asking for the same soft layers and sideswept bangs. Hairdressers from London to New York described queues of women clutching Diana's photos demanding to look just like her. Soon, the hairstyle was no longer Diana's alone. It had been replicated on millions of heads. How could she ever escape from an identity that everyone else had already claimed? But Diana never liked the hairstyle, and it was at the very pinnacle of her fairy tale that she made it known that Diana's wedding day was the talk of the century. She was marrying Prince Charles, the prince and heir apparent to the throne. Hours had gone into preparing her look, especially her hair, for the sparkling Spencer tiara to sit on. Millions watched the wedding ceremony, and many wished for the same kind of happiness. But it was later that Richard Dalton revealed that Diana was dissatisfied with her wedding hairstyle. Every girl who wishes to get married dreams of exactly how she'd love to look. But on the most important day of her life, her final look was far from her imagination. Even the tiara gave her a splitting headache. Yes, the image was beautiful, but it wasn't hers. And for years, she lived that life of forced conformity until 1990, when something startling happened. The year was 1990. Inside a London studio that buzzed with anticipation, Princess Diana had arrived for a Vogue shoot, stepping into a world different from the usual palace corridors. The photographer was Patrick de Marchelier, a man known for his modern style that stripped subjects of artifice and revealed their essence. The team wanted something fresh, something bold. But no one in that room could have predicted just how far Diana was willing to go. The hairstylist was Sam McKnight, a rising star in the fashion world. His job seemed simple enough: style Diana's hair for the shoot. Yet when he asked her what she wanted, He had no idea how fast that question would immortalize his name or how Diana's answer would make history. "What would you do if I just said, 'Do whatever you like'?" she asked. Sam, slightly stunned, offered a suggestion half in jest. "I'd cut it all off." To his surprise, Diana didn't laugh. She smiled and said, "Let's do it." Can you imagine the silence that must have fallen in that room? A princess, one of the most photographed women in the world, permitted her hair to be cut drastically short on a whim during a magazine shoot. Was this spontaneity, or was it a carefully suppressed desire finally erupting into action? Sam himself has spoken about the moment with awe. He admitted that he was nervous and fully aware of the stakes. This was not an ordinary client. This was Diana. But he also recognized something deeper in her request, a hunger for change. And he was willing to satisfy her desire. According to Sam, all it took was a few literal snips to transform her look instantly. As the soft locks fell away, Diana's sharp face emerged fully with newfound radiance. The tint room erupted with energy. Somehow, Sam had made the perfect hairstyle to frame her beautiful face and describe her courageous mind. The photographs that day captured more than beauty. They captured an extraordinary rebirth. And when the photos were released to the public, the reaction was electric. But beneath the glamour of that day lay something even more profound. That simple hairstyle was not just a transformation or rebellion. It coincided with something more painful. And that makes one wonder, was the Vogue cut really about style, or was it a cry for help? To understand why that pixie haircut carried so much weight, you have to place it within the exact timeline of her life. By 1990, her marriage to Prince Charles was unraveling in plain sight behind palace walls. There was coldness and a third presence that Diana could no longer ignore, Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana had known about Charles's attachment to Camilla from the very beginning, but as the years wore on, it became unbearable. The woman who had once embodied youthful hope and innocence was now living in the shadow of betrayal. She was increasingly isolated in the palace, and every smile or wave became a performance for the camera. Although they had children, William and Harry, their marriage had hollowed out, and the couple were leading largely separate lives. It was torment for Diana, and could a haircut ever truly heal such pain? Perhaps not, but it could at least mark the beginning of reclaiming control. Psychologists talk about post-traumatic growth, the phenomenon where trauma doesn't just break a person, but pushes them to rebuild stronger. Maybe this was what pushed her to turn her hair into a canvas to declare her own independence, as if drawing a line in the sand to rebel against the rigid choreography of royal life. And this rebellion mattered precisely because of the monarchy's unspoken rules. Royals were expected to conform visually, especially the women, who had to be in demure dresses and predictable hairstyles, nothing too daring or fashion-forward. After all, appearance was protocol, and to break from it was to challenge the institution itself. And Diana's cut defied this system. God knows many women trapped in crumbling marriages wish they could also shed their old image and step into a new self with one bold act. Yet the question lingers. Was this haircut her shield, her sword, or both? It protected her from being perceived as weak, but it also struck a blow against the narrative that she was powerless. And as the cracks in her marriage widened into a chasm, her new look became inseparable from her new voice. The world saw the change as a style evolution. But those closest to Diana, and Diana herself, knew it was revolutionary. But she didn't make this change alone. The man who held the scissors was more than a stylist. He was the architect of her transformation. Every great transformation has its engineer, and in Diana's story, that role belonged to Sam McKnight. Before their meeting, Sam was already becoming a powerhouse in the high fashion world. He had styled supermodels on the runways of Paris and Milan, worked on iconic Vogue covers, and collaborated with designers like Chanel and Vivienne Westwood. Known for his versatility, he could conjure sleek minimalism one day and avant-garde fantasy the next. Yet, for all his success, nothing could have prepared him for the moment he held scissors above the head of the most photographed woman in the world. Their creative chemistry was immediate. Sam later recalled how surprised he was by Diana's willingness to experiment and her trust in his instincts. This was not the sheltered princess the tabloids portrayed, but a woman ready to take risks. Yes, the Vogue shoot haircut was the catalyst, but what followed was a partnership that lasted until her final years. Diana ditched her previous stylists, and Sam became her go-to stylist for countless public appearances and shoots, an opportunity Sam took very seriously because each time he refined her image into something stronger. He didn't just cut Diana's hair short and leave it at that. He built an entire visual identity around it with precise layering and styling techniques. McKnight demonstrated to the world the versatility of cropped hair. He could make it sleek for an evening gown or messy for casual outings. Each variation spoke volumes about how fluid and adaptable Diana was. Maybe it all had to do with Sam, because something did set him apart from her previous stylists, and that was not creativity or talent. It was the respect he had for her. After years of stylists and palace handlers telling Diana what she should look like, she finally had a creative ally who experimented with her and empowered her to make choices. In many ways, Sam gave her not just a haircut, but a platform to say what she couldn't say out loud. This was also the era of the power woman aesthetic. The early 1990s saw women in politics and Hollywood claiming visual authority with sharper silhouettes and minimalist styling. There was Hillary Clinton's cropped blonde bob and Sharon Stone's sleek pixie variations, as if saying hair was synonymous with power. Sam positioned Diana firmly within this wave as a woman of her time. She was no longer being dressed for fairy tales, but styled for the real world. It's easy to think of hair as superficial, but Sam's work with Diana shows otherwise. The scissors were tools of transformation, and the hands that wielded them helped one woman claim her voice without needing to say a word. He turned a princess into a global style icon, not by forcing her into a mold, but by freeing her of one dot. When Diana stepped out after the Vogue shoot, the world did a double take. For the first time, the global press didn't just cover what she was wearing, they dissected what her new look meant. British tabloids exploded with headlines like "Princess Diana unveils bold new look," while fashion magazines described her transformation as the rebirth of an icon. Some conservative voices sniffed at the change, calling it too much for a princess and too modern for royalty. But for most of the public, it was electric, because Diana had always been more than just a princess. She was a symbol they had come to love and adore. And now, she was rewriting what that symbol stood for. Public perception shifted almost overnight. For years, Diana had been cast as the victim, as the young bride wronged by her husband, and as the fragile woman at war with palace life. But now, the cropped hair reframed her entirely. She was no longer the picture of vulnerability. She was the embodiment of resilience. Polls taken in that era even showed a surge in her popularity, particularly among women who saw in her haircut a mirror of their own struggles for autonomy. Could this have been why Diana's every new appearance was met with gasps of admiration, as though the public were watching a phoenix rise? Her wardrobe only amplified the effect. Take the Versace powder blue skirt suit she wore in 1995. Its structured shoulders and tailored fit were complemented perfectly by her short feathered hair, exuding polished authority. Or the unforgettable black Christina Stambolian cocktail dress, called the revenge dress, that she wore the very night Charles confessed to adultery on television. With her hair swept back and her neckline bare, Diana radiated a confidence that eclipsed any royal protocol. Was she hurt? Certainly. But that night, the hair and the dress together told the world she would not be diminished. Even her casual looks became iconic. Photographs of Diana leaving the gym in cycling shorts, oversized sweaters, and sunglasses felt so revolutionary. No other royal had ever been so effortlessly modern or unapologetically human. And yet, even in that casualness, the crop style reinforced her freedom. The new Diana also poured her energy into humanitarian work, and her hair became part of her humanitarian persona. When she visited landmine victims in Angola or embraced AIDS patients at a time when stigma was rampant, the cropped style projected compassion and strength. She looked like a woman who could step into any space and command attention without relying on royal pomp and circumstance. Could it be that the short hair helped bridge the gap between Diana the princess and Diana the global humanitarian? The palace, of course, remained silent, but silence often speaks volumes. For an institution built on tradition, Diana's reinvention was a disruptive move. Her look was modern, her confidence unsettling, and her popularity threatening. She was no longer playing by their rules, and the world loved her all the more for it. The short hair was no longer just a hairstyle. Diana had taken control of her image, and in doing so, she had also taken control of her story. More than 2 decades after her death, Diana's short hair remains one of the most enduring symbols of her legacy. Ask anyone to picture her, and chances are the image that flashes is not the young bride with feathered curls, but the confident woman with the modern pixie cut, stepping into a room with her head held high. Hairstyles come and go, yet Diana's remains frozen in time as a visual shorthand for authenticity and rebellion. Her influence didn't fade with the 1990s. Modern celebrities and influencers still cite Diana as an inspiration when embracing shorter cuts that symbolize change. From Victoria Beckham's angular bob in the 2000s to Charlize Theron's elegant crops on red carpets, echoes of Diana's bold choice continue to ripple through fashion and culture. Even Meghan Markle, often compared to Diana, has been photographed with sleeker, shorter styles that draw inevitable comparisons to the late princess. Could it be that every modern reinvention threw hair owes something, however small, to Diana's rebellion with scissors? And yet her haircut is remembered not just for its aesthetic influence, but for its emotional power. For women who have felt trapped in roles they didn't choose, Diana's decision remains a beacon. The message was clear. You cannot always control your circumstances, but you can control how you present yourself to the world. In that sense, Diana transformed hair into a silent but unmistakable language. Perhaps that is the most powerful lesson of all, that sometimes the smallest gestures can become louder than speeches and more deafening than crowds. Diana's final cut was mostly about freedom, and isn't that why, even today, the world still remembers her, not just as a princess, but as a woman who dared to define herself. Do you remember Diana's iconic pixie hairstyle? Which celebrity's reenactment of the style do you think sends a message as strong as Diana's? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.